If you follow this channel, you know I like Fortnite. I still do, but playing it lately has honestly been pretty rough for an average player such as myself. I've been really reluctant to play for a couple months, but I forced myself to. Now, don't worry, I did get to level 200 and got every reward in last season's battle pass, and I am getting there this season. Want to know how I managed to get the XP for all those levels? Well, I'd go to that one fishing location on the edge of the map, get as many floppers as possible, then stay in the storm the entire game doing as many challenges as I could. It's just been getting harder to play the game. Maybe I'll get into the groove after killing a couple players, but I'll quickly be reminded why I don't feel like playing the game once I start doing well. Chapter 3 Season 2 had a good start. Playing Fortnite without the ability to build for like a week seemed crazy, but it was surprisingly fun. I even managed to get a no-build solo win on the first day. I then proceeded to never win another solo match for the rest of the season. During one of those no-build days, I played maybe 3 hours of solo matches straight, and didn't win a single match. It wasn't bad at first. I was having fun, doing challenges, killing a few players, and so on. After playing enough though, I slipped into this let's try to win a game now mindset. And boy is that an awful mindset to be in. All those times you get close to winning are so spirit-breaking when you're in this state. One would probably suggest just don't play to win. And to that I say, shut up. Don't give me that. Don't play to win. The object of the game is to be the last man standing, to win. You can't just go up to someone playing an action game who's been stuck on a boss for hours and tell them, just don't play to beat it, because what's the point of them fighting the boss then? You can't just tell someone at school taking a test, just don't take it to pass, because the whole point of taking a test is to see if you're knowledgeable enough to pass it. Perhaps I'm using false equivalence with these two examples, but you guys get the idea, right? Sure, there's more to do in the world of Fortnite than just winning. You can work on your challenges, for instance. When you're playing a particularly long session though, you kind of do all your challenges, and there's no point in grinding out those crappy daily challenges because they don't reward you nearly as much as those special weekly ones. So, if you still feel like playing, all you really have left to do is see if you can win. Anyway, building eventually came back, and I had another one of those 3-hour play sessions. The first several games I played were incredibly fun. People had been without building for so long, they had to get used to the mechanic again. It felt like I was fighting inexperienced players back from Chapter 1 and early Chapter 2. It was great. Unfortunately, after enough matches, it seemed Epic Games saw I was enjoying myself too much and started putting me in sweaty lobbies. Either everyone got used to building pretty quickly, or these people I encountered were creative mode nerds that practiced building while everyone else wasn't. Back in 2019, asking anyone on the internet what happened to Fortnite would usually yield the same response: creative mode. People didn't really know how to build. Sure, you had some that utilized the mechanic better than others, but looking back, they were still pretty bad. With this new mode that allowed players to constantly practice building with no restraint, the game was bound to get filled with people using this mechanic in completely unintended but incredibly effective ways. Now average people who just wanted to hop on and have a little fun, maybe win a game or two, were no longer guaranteed either of those because nerds who spent 24/7 practicing building dominated lobbies. Sure, this would have happened regardless of creative mode's existence, but the influx of wannabe pros would have occurred over a much longer period of time, rather than just a couple months. So, that's what people back then considered Fortnite's downfall. What do I, a person who's still playing the game a couple years after this downfall, think the current problem is? Well, the game is generally in a pretty healthy state, so this is more of a non-issue that maybe only I consider problematic. The addition of zero build mode is the problem. And no, it's not because I suck at it. If zero build had been added years ago, it would have been fine. Doing this so late in the game's lifespan was clearly out of desperation. The player count, while still fairly high, was nowhere near as high as it had been years prior, and that's because sweaty builders discouraged normal players from playing. With zero build, these discouraged players were bound to return, right? Better yet, potential consumers worried building made Fortnite inaccessible to them would find asylum in zero build, right? Well, the answer to both of those questions is yes. We saw streamers like Tfue, Nick Mercs, and Tim the Tatman come back to try it out. I know a few of my friends who never played the game wanted to try it out now. It worked. Epic Games himself truly saved the game. I'm sure the player count was way higher than it had been for the past year. So, higher player count, publicity from internet personalities, how could zero build be problematic? Again, this is probably something only I consider an issue, and that's because only I'm affected. May sound arrogant, and that's because it is, but maybe I'm not alone. Perhaps other people out there share the same sentiment. So, why is zero build a problem? Well, everyone who plays Fortnite has some amount of building prowess. Epic Games throwing in a permanent mode devoid of this mechanic they forced players to adapt to for years essentially divides all these players, and not in half. You have a large number of players who don't want to build because they're not good at it, a large number of players who do want to build because they're really good at it, and then there's me, person who likes the utility of building but isn't annoying like your average sweat because I'm not good. The problem with this division is lobbies are no longer diverse enough. With all the people not good at building in zero build mode, you're left with nothing but tryhards in regular build mode, making every encounter feel like you're fighting the last guy in the lobby. Now if you want to go to zero build mode, you'll just encounter a bunch of people who never miss their shots because the only other games they play are other shooting games, so they're always in practice. I was a fairly decent builder in the early days of Chapter 2. Granted, I was playing on Switch. Back then, Fortnite Mobile was still a thing, so mobile and Switch players would be placed in the same lobbies, away from scary console and PC players. If you could somewhat build, you were almost always the best player in these crap lobbies. I would literally win 2 to 4 games every day for weeks back in Chapter 2 Season 2. I migrated to the PlayStation 5 for Fortnite quite a while ago. It was a much better experience. I finally had good graphics, better frame rate, and a controller with big analog sticks. That didn't make me any better though. Sure, my aim improved slightly under these conditions, but building didn't get any easier. If I ever got into a build battle and lost, it was mainly because my opponents could edit their structures effortlessly. Maybe I'd match my opponent's aggressive building to keep them on their toes, but the second I'd hear, I'd be screwed. On top of that, I've never been the greatest at the multitasking aspect of Fortnite, but the people I'm up against seem to be experts. It's probably PC players I'm encountering, but it has to be other console users too, right? How are these guys so good at building, editing, and general multitasking? Well, one possibility is they're just PC players on console. Xbox has the option for keyboard and mouse, and surprisingly, the PS5 does too. All I have to do is hook up a wireless keyboard and mouse to a fancy USB-C adapter, then plug it into the PS5. I've seen people do similar stuff for the PS4. Another possibility is back paddles. These are extra buttons that go under your controller and can register as any of the existing buttons. Seamlessly switching between building and regular combat is difficult for me because the build button is one of the face buttons. So, if I'm in a fight, I have to remove my thumb from the right analog stick and press circle to enter build mode. Though brief, it's a risky move because camera control is integral to this game. This is the multitasking thing I mentioned earlier. I consider the scenario of switching between build and combat mode while also moving the camera around multitasking. I guess you could be one of those people that curl their index finger over the face button so their thumb never has to leave the analog stick, but that's hard to get used to, especially since so much input is required during combat. It's fine in a more casual environment. Take Elden Ring's open world. Pressing down circle with your index finger to sprint while moving the camera around is much more manageable there because moving your character from one point to another is all you have to worry about. Your average Fortnite clash is a mix of running, jumping, shooting, building, editing, reloading, flipping through stuff in your inventory, and switching between placing structures, using weapons, and using your harvesting tool. There's just way too much multitasking involved. During particularly stressful fights, my brain eventually imagines my fingers accidentally interlocking with each other because that's how it feels fumbling around with the controller. It's even worse for me because I got used to pressing triangle to switch out of build mode. The intended way to get back to your weapons from build mode is pressing the circle button again. Pressing triangle switches to your harvesting tool, but if you use the shoulder buttons after that, you switch back to your weapons. It's basically more steps on top of an already demanding control system, but I can't break the habit. It's mainly because the edit button is also circle, but you have to hold it down for a particular amount of time. My editing hold time is set pretty low, and it really screws me up if I ever try to use circle to exit build mode. Here's a scenario. Say I'm running to a ramp I built. I'm currently in build mode, and my opponent is past the ramp. So, as I'm running up the ramp, I want to switch back to combat mode so I have access to my weapons. If I press circle to do this, the game will think I held the button down too long and try to edit the ramp below me. This happens almost every time, and it always throws me off. It's like I know the next 10 moves I'm going to do, and this accidental switch to edit mode sets me back to square one, and I have no clue what the hell I was planning on doing. I could just increase the edit hold time in the settings, but it really slows down the whole editing process. it's a lose-lose situation, so that's why I have to press triangle to exit build mode. Wait, why did I say all this stuff? Oh yeah, the paddles! You see, with paddles, your thumb doesn't have to let go of the analog stick to press the edit button, or the jump button, or the reload button for that matter, nor do you have to resort to curling your index finger over the face buttons. Paddles allow the unused fingers under your controller to get in on the action. It's really helpful. It allows for a full distribution of responsibility, and ensures no particular finger is being overworked. Sadly, I don't have reasonable access to back paddles. A third-party PS5 controller with built-in back paddles is honestly way too expensive. Besides, I don't like the idea of the controller being entirely made by a third party. I'd rather have an original controller with a third-party attachment. Better yet, an original controller with a first-party attachment. Sony eventually released their own paddles for the PS4 controller, but it's unlikely they'll make one for the DualSense because it doesn't have a port for one like the DualShock 4 has. So yeah, I'm probably getting schooled by people using keyboard and mouse and controllers with paddles. I'm also probably getting destroyed by people using regular controllers who are just really good with the bare minimum. Essentially, I can barely play build mode because I've hit a wall. Very little can make me a better builder now, and the things that could require too much practice and effort, stuff I cannot spare on something as unimportant as a video game I like. Fortnite's not my livelihood. I'm not some YouTuber who profits off Fortnite content. It makes sense for these types of people to be proficient at the game, not me. Fortnite gave me the new poop dealer skin early, and I gotta say, it's pretty sick. I actually really love the design, so I thought of a really fun challenge. I call it the Hold Your Poop In for an Incredibly Long Time challenge. I'm gonna go check the comments of my last video, and for each V-Buck scam and fake camgirl comment I see, I gotta down an entire glizzy with extra mustard. To ensure this is challenging enough, when I'm done with the glizzies, I'm gonna take a laxative pill for every kill I get in this video, and duct tape my butthole shut. This is gonna be absolutely insane, so make sure to watch the whole video. Let's jump into it. It wouldn't be so bad if we had players of varying skill in every match, but like I said earlier, lobbies are no longer diverse. Everyone who isn't that great at building is now in zero build, leaving all the really good builders in regular build mode. Not to mention skill-based matchmaking is still a thing. Don't get me wrong, having some pro win every game because they're thrown into matches full of noobs is definitely bad, and skill-based matchmaking prevents that, but it's just so skewed. To me, it feels like once I got slightly good at the game, instead of putting me in a sort of middle ground, Epic Games just decided to throw me into the really good category when I had just been in the could be decent one. Honestly, that might have to do with me changing platforms. Like I said, Switch and mobile players were grouped into the same lobbies. That's because they sucked. Switching to the PS5 probably made Epic Games' algorithm think, oh my god, this player has over 85 solo wins, he must be a good player. Let's throw him in with the really good console and PC guys. It's like if I were in a high school where all students got Fs, and I got the title of valedictorian because I was the only one who got Cs, and got accepted to a college just because I was rank 1 in the class. In that scenario, I'm not smart, everyone else was just stupider. I wasn't that good at Fortnite, everyone else on Switch and mobile was just way worse. You'd think just going back to the Switch version would help, but it can't. Because Fortnite Mobile isn't a thing anymore, Switch players are now grouped with all other platforms. Not enough people play Fortnite on Switch, so they can't just have lobbies all to themselves. Hell, the Allow Cross-Platform Play option in settings is non-existent on the Switch version. It's not like it even worked anyway. If you do have the option, you'll just sit there for minutes while Fortnite fails to load a matchup. But I digress. Basically, not even downgrading to the worst version of Fortnite is enough to keep the sweats on PC and console away. With all this complaining about building and sweaty players, you'd probably suggest playing in zero build mode. But not having the ability to build is problematic too. Building could really save you if used defensively, as intended. There are lots of times where I fire a shotgun point blank, miss my opponent because aiming with the controller sucks, then quickly put a wall in front of me so the opponent can't easily retaliate. Basically, if your aim wasn't good, you could at least compensate with building. But guess what? There is no building in zero build. Here's a scenario I find myself in all too often when playing in this mode. I'm in an open area, I get shot at. I have no clue where I'm being shot from, that stupid damage indicator rarely helps. So, I start running, trying to find some cover while still being shot. This person has clearly never played anything other than shooting games in their life because they're not missing any of their shots. I die. Look at this clip. This guy has no idea I've locked onto him. I shoot, he starts sprinting for his life. I keep landing shots and eventually kill him. You see how he had no chance of survival there? Actually, I guess that's untrue. The terrain was uneven, providing opportunity for cover, and he probably could have just ran in the opposite direction of where I was. But you see what the issue is? When you're shot at, you panic a little. When that happens, what do you usually do? Well, you build all over yourself like a madman to protect yourself. Without building, your only reasonable option is to run to some random object nearby for protection. Unfortunately, you're not always going to be near something that provides ample cover. So, you kind of have to assume you're in the worst case scenario anytime you're being shot at. On top of stopping incoming fire, quickly building after being shot gives you a chance to catch your breath and get a scope of your surroundings, see just where those shots were coming from. This is possible because once you've barricaded yourself, your opponent will usually cease fire because they don't want to waste ammo shooting down your structures, so they back off for a bit. You can't do stuff like that in zero build. It almost always boils down to, is someone shooting at you? If yes, run for cover. Is there any cover nearby? If no, then you're screwed. Wait, do you have any shockwave grenades? No? Then you're still screwed. Then there's the whole high ground thing. At least with building, you could build over yourself to block fire from above. You could also match your opponent's height by building up. If someone's on a hill, mountain, or cliff in zero build, they're set because there's very little others can do. You die so fast in zero build, it's not even funny. Generally, a Fortnite match tends to last over 20 minutes, which is quite a long time. Making it so far into these matches only to die in less than 2 seconds because there was just nothing you could do is the absolute worst. I guess you could compare this with other shooting games, but those aren't really battle royales. Sure, they may have battle royale modes, but those aren't the main event. Most people are playing those deathmatch type modes. If you die in them, you immediately respawn in the same game. There are pretty much no repercussions to dying. I'm sure there are other game modes in these crappy shooting games where dying could cause problems, but I don't really care to find out. In Fortnite, if you die, it's over. You have to start all over again in a new match. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, that's just how the game works. But if the game is designed in such a way that one side of a particular conflict can be guaranteed no chance of survival with no opportunity for a comeback, then we have a problem. That's how I won my first no-build game in Chapter 3 Season 2. I was at the top of this cliff, and the last guy was down below in the canyon. All the ziplines he could have used to reach me were out in the 5-tick storm. He had cowcatchers and shockwave grenades, but they didn't help. He would throw the cowcatchers down, but they didn't provide the appropriate cover, and his shockwave grenades didn't launch him high enough to reach me. He had no chance. It was unfair. There are lots of times I'll get into a standard gunfight where the opponent and I just spray each other till one of us dies, and that's okay. I consider that a pretty even scenario. Unfortunately, most of my deaths in zero build are from uneven scenarios. Basically, I got shot at, and there was literally nothing I could do. I'm in an open field, someone far away doesn't stop shooting, there's no cover, I die. There's someone on a hill that I can't scale, they didn't stop shooting, I die. I guess you could argue to just play more passively, but that makes losing even worse. Spending an entire match just hiding around avoiding all possible conflict just to die to one of the last people in the match is even worse than going in, guns blazing, and eventually dying. Even though both scenarios can last roughly the same amount of time, the passive approach feels way longer than it actually is. If you're a competent player that willingly goes into fights, you're keeping yourself busy the entire match. Because of that, matches feel shorter. Think of it like being in school. Boring classes where all you do is take notes and watch the teacher read over PowerPoint slides tend to feel dragged out. That's because they're not interesting. Conversely, if you're in an engaging class, the bell will suddenly ring and you'll think, oh wow, class is already over? Because you were productive and likely enjoyed whatever took place. In Fortnite, avoiding players and hopping from bush to tree trunk to rooftop to rock is boring and uneventful. I used to do it all the time back in Chapter 1, but after playing enough over the course of Chapter 2 and gaining some amount of confidence, I don't want to resort to that again. I don't want to feel as though I'm no longer any good and can't win without hiding for 90% of a match. Unfortunately, hiding is key in zero build. Build and zero build are too hard for me now. Do I just quit the game then? Well, no. Playing solos may be too difficult nowadays, but playing with teammates is a different story. Lately, I've been playing with friends quite a bit. We honestly play zero build more than regular build mode. When you have teammates, zero build is way more manageable, and actually pretty fun. It leads to some pretty crazy moments too. Look at this match. My squad and I had high ground and were pretty much guaranteed victory. Unfortunately, one of my friends accidentally shockwaves us into the storm. Surprisingly, none of us actually died from this. That threw us off our game though, and my teammates ended up dying to the other team. So it was down to me and a full squad. Luckily, they were terrible and couldn't finish me off. The storm circle had gotten so small that it started moving instead of shrinking, and I was able to grapple my way back up the Daily Bugle Mountain. I then chilled at the top as each of my opponents died to storm, incapable of reaching me. If that team were at all competent, I would have not pulled that off. Anyway, I still play solos, but most of the time, it's just to do challenges. Like I said, my strategy is to catch a bunch of fish, then hang around in the storm the entire game to do as many challenges as possible. I even work around those opponent-related quests by attacking wolves or hostile NPCs. Those stupid, damage opponents with garbage weapon quests would be way too time-consuming otherwise. Why spend several games dealing little bits of damage to players that end up killing you with the better weapon and halt your progress when you could easily run up to a pack of wolves and deal damage to them instead? A third game mode where building is slowed down would be perfect for a player like me. You can't crank 90s, edit super fast, or tarp, and crazy build battles wouldn't exist. This slowdown would essentially cripple building's offensive capabilities, making it a mere defensive mechanic, like the developers intended it to be. I'm sure others on the internet have shared similar ideas, so this isn't some groundbreaking suggestion. Maybe it wouldn't work, but I guess we'll never know unless Epic Games actually tries it out. But they likely never will. Remember double pumping in early Chapter 1? Epic Games eventually nerfed it by having a cooldown if you switched to a shotgun from another shotgun. If being able to do things really fast was such a problem that the developers had to slow it down, why couldn't something like that have been done for placing and editing structures? I guess you could say zero build was the nerf to building, but it's not much of a nerf if it's just gone. They took the easy way out, but I guess it was effective. I don't think, hey guys, we slowed building down, is compelling enough to bring back players compared to, hey guys, we got rid of building. I like to think another issue is the game's weapon pool. The developers have to balance guns as best as they can so they can work in both build and zero build modes. You think the tactical and combat shotguns will ever return to the game? Probably not. They'd be way too good in zero build mode. Remember how the drum shotgun sucked when it was first introduced back in Chapter 1? It barely did any damage unless you landed successive shots, but that was hard because people could easily block with building. When they brought it back for Chapter 3 Season 2, it was, unsurprisingly, the best shotgun in the game. Why use the striker pump if one meaty hit isn't enough to kill your opponent? If they have the drum, they'll be able to shred your health before you're able to get another shot off with the pump. Same goes for the crappy auto shotgun. It didn't do enough damage fast enough. The drum's gone for Season 3, and I doubt it'll ever return, especially after seeing how much it dominated in zero build. If they bring back any weapons, they either have to be no-brainer picks, like the flintlock, or the developers have to make drastic changes to them. Just look at the heavy shotgun. It was basically a chunkier tack back in the day. It would not be acceptable in today's climate. The new version from Chapter 3 Season 2 saw a major reduction in the spread when aiming down sights. Just look at that. That's the smallest spread we've ever seen in a shotgun in this game. Hell, they even vaulted the combat SMG recently. That thing was literally the best weapon in the game for a while. It's been replaced by the Charge SMG, which has a similar fire rate, but you can't just go full Unga Bunga on an opponent. You have to be a little more patient because of the charging aspect. You can't have a fun, powerful weapon anymore. There has to be some glaring caveat now. Anvil rocket launcher shots go up into the air and give anyone ample time to run away from its target. The Ranger shotgun, though hard-hitting, only had one shot per magazine. The DMR, really strong, but has much slower shots compared to the previous scoped weapons. You guys see what I mean, right? It's basic game design, I know, but I think Epic Games is playing it a little too safe. The weapons we currently have aren't that bad, but I don't know, I guess I just missed the tack. A decent bit of the gameplay I've been showing is me playing during Season 1 of Chapter 3. My reason for using outdated gameplay instead of more recent clips is because I've been reluctant to play solos normally. I'm too terrified of immediately dying to the first player I see. I did decide to play a few solo matches though, and first game in, first player I encounter, they're a sweat. Look at all this building. Like, chill out man, you can even hear him randomly editing crap too. You tried so hard, and you still died to me. Now, to downplay my success, he was only hitting me with a charge SMG, and that's because it was a weekly challenge, which is funny. I literally just talked about how those damage opponents with a crappy weapon quests are better done with wolves. He hunted down a player, me, tried to deal damage with the awful weapon, then died because I used a more optimal one for that situation. He did a little over 100 damage to me, but the quest wants you to do 500. I bet the guy was pissed he had to jump into another match to continue the quest. If you wanted more proof that my aim is atrocious, here you go. I'm so bad! I couldn't even finish the wolf off. Then the guy hides behind a rock, not knowing I have a great angle on him. I line my shot up and proceed to hit him once in that entire spray. This is later in the match. I actually managed to deal a decent bit of damage to this player, but I can't finish him off because I'm terrible. My kill gets stolen, and I proceed to lose the match. I actually won the next match I played though. It was not impressive. I ran into a bot, killed it, then quickly ran into an actual player. But they were terrified, crouching the whole time, not building well at all. It was weird. Last time I ran into someone like that was back when I played on the Switch. Anyway, I then proceeded to avoid any signs of conflict and bush hopped. I was pretty much swinging past a bunch of fights by the end of the game. By top 3, I was sure to die because I was about to get bodied by a pro builder. Luckily, the other guy third-partied and killed him for me. I was terrified. I didn't want to fail and get second place like last match. Fortunately, the last player was even more scared than I was. The last 30 seconds was just hearing the guy's footsteps while I built above him. Neither of us wanted to commence fighting. I eventually got the guy out of a box and shotgunned him. What a pathetic match that was. Nothing in that game was impressive. I had 3 kills total. One of them a bot, and the other 2 players more scared than me. If it weren't for that last guy's lack of confidence, I would have gotten second for sure. That last kill wasn't even clean. I hit the guy once with the SMG, and I completely missed my first shotgun blast. I also felt it necessary to record some zero build gameplay for better visuals of what I was ranting about, but the first game I played, I won and didn't feel like playing again. It was yet another unimpressive display. I hit around the entire game, only getting 1 kill at the very beginning of the match, and the last guy shockwaveded himself into the storm and died. It was honestly the least amount of effort I've ever put into a successful Fortnite match. These few games actually made me think of scrapping this video. Was I just overreacting the past few months? Was all the ranting I just did for naught? No, it can't be. I just got incredibly lucky those games. I know what I experienced in the last few seasons. It was awful. In build mode, I'd constantly run into sweats way out of my league, and in zero build last season, it was impossible to win a match because everyone had aim way better than mine, utilizing your surroundings for cover barely helped, and getting screwed over by terrain happened all too often. If anything, this gameplay really just showed how pathetically effective hiding is, and how much I've regressed. Gone are the late Switch days where I actually had confidence. My highest kill count is 16. I got it in Chapter 2 Season 3. I've gotten close a few times over the seasons, but I can no longer get high kill games consistently, and I don't think I'll ever beat my record. I even managed to win a duos and squads game with no teammates back then. This stuff is just not possible anymore. In conclusion, Fortnite's still a good game, but I'm honestly struggling to play it now. Sure, it's pretty enjoyable with friends, but I just can't seem to enjoy the game alone as much anymore. I can't go into build mode without dealing with wannabe pros every encounter. I like being able to build, but I'm not the kind of person to make a 5-star hotel the second I get shot from a distance, and I just can't edit. Why can't Epic Games' algorithm see that? I'm merely a decent player. Going to zero build is not a good option because you're made a sitting duck. Unless you have a full stack of shockwave grenades in your inventory, you're almost always screwed. I'm all for utilizing your surroundings, but with such sparse cover in certain situations and everything easily being destroyed, you can rarely catch a break. I hate how you can often get completely screwed by the map and there's just nothing you can do. I guess you could hide the entire time to avoid most of these problems, but what's the point? Winning a game where you're pinned against 99 other players doesn't feel that gratifying if you only engaged with the very last one, especially if you had gained enough skill over the years to consider yourself above that method at one point. Epic Games kind of screwed me over. They cut the middleman out, but I guess it doesn't matter because they have enough people on both ends of the spectrum playing their game. Who cares if just one guy isn't having as much fun anymore?